Welcome to the HR Book Club with HR Recruitment Solutions. This is the series where we get to meet the authors behind some of the very best HR books that you could be buying. Today, I'm joined by David Whitehead, and we're going to be discussing his book, Leadership is Sexy, Management is Not. Hi, David. You all right?
Hi, Leon. Thanks for the invite.
No worries. So, obviously, I suppose first off, it's always good to start with introductions. And I know that in terms of with your career, you didn't really start into HR. So I wonder if you could sort of tell us how you got into HR and became a HR professional that you are today.
Sure. Thank you. I've been in HR for about 20 years. And originally, I'm an engineer. And I then did an MBA, so a fairly classical transition. And from that MBA, I went into a consulting company. And that consulting company was focused on HR.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. So, and the book. So it sort of came as a surprise to me because I didn't know you were writing this book. It was kind of a new thing. So the book is called Leadership is Sexy, Management is Not. So what is, the title gives it away a little bit, but what is the book about?
Well, it's about leadership and the differences between that and management. And also what individuals should do if they want to become better leaders. And it draws on history and also contemporary examples of leadership and what that means for each of us. And it's intended to be a book to guide every leader. So it's a very simple model that everyone, I hope, can remember and use on a daily basis. It has a weakness, of course, which it doesn't address every single individual's needs because it's independent of the context of someone that's working in, say, a recruitment company. But it does provide the core of leadership for everyone. So there are lessons for every person. And I hope that people find it valuable for that.
So it's not exclusively aimed at the HR profession, it's aimed at anybody really within a sort of leadership sort of capacity.
Absolutely. Certainly, of course, it's aimed for people who are leaders within HR, but also people who are in HR and want to help other leaders get better.
Yeah, okay. David, what motivated you to write the book?
Oh, several things. One of the drivers was COVID.
Right, okay.
So today, I'm an independent consultant, and during the COVID period, that work largely dried up because people weren't meeting and they weren't running leadership development programs, and it was difficult to get clients. And one of the drivers then was what can I usefully and productively do with my time during COVID? And the book has over 800 references. I must have read 3 or 4 times that in terms of books and papers. So I was very well occupied writing the book. Another driver was my wife was encouraging me to write a book.
Okay.
And a final driver was I've personally led maybe about 14 or 15 teams, and I've lost count of how many projects, and I wanted to share some of that experience and write it down, both to share in a book form, but also to use as part of my own consulting where I do leadership development programs.
Right. Yeah. So this was, I suppose, from your first book, obviously. So how did you find the kind of research? You said obviously you read lots of books and things like that to get to this sort of stage. How did you find the research and writing process?
Challenging. There were some days where it flew. The flow was very good, and I could sit and write for 4 or 5 hours and not notice it. And other days I just needed to have a blank day and not write. It was very interesting to explore some of the tangents that I went off on within the book. So when I talk about history examples, it was very interesting for me personally to explore in more depth some of the history examples, some of the examples from 100 years ago, and some of the examples from 10 or 20 years ago, or even some of the recent examples that are contemporary now.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. I suppose one of the things we ask at the book club is just really if there's a book that you would recommend that's not your own to a HR professional.
Yes, I think the book that I recommend often to people is by Marshall Goldsmith, who's a very famous and very successful author. And one of his very early books was What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
Okay.
in that book, there are lessons for all of us, whether we are leaders or managers, whether we are working in HR or in finance. It's a very useful book. And it's one of those books that you can read again 5 years later and get more lessons from.
Yeah. Fantastic. Excellent. Well, thank you, David, for joining us today. And yeah, I'm sure we'll see you again some other time.
Thank you, Liam.